the idea of migration and shifting rather from one place, their native villages to the city is probably the most important crisis of our own time. The development of city, the crowded cities, and they're living their own villages. So two things were happening simultaneously in a social and economical periphery. This creates a kind of an imbalance in the society. So this was the core area, and I wanted to translate the whole thing into the medium, or the history of the medium rather. Click the panorama of the spaces where I was acquainted, and the spaces, the important places of the villages, the common place of a village where all people gather together in a space. So these spaces been documented through that. So that was one idea at certain point of time. Then I did it with Wycliffe Clodion negatives as well as the paper negatives. Then I thought, I've collected family albums, photographs from family albums, then printed on the found object like broken tiles from the houses. And there were also images that where I've been documenting my own space. So from villages where I shifted and which became my place. So this new space is also need to be documented with that temporality of it. So I documented it with silver gelatin negatives on glass plates, and then I started working with it with the fragility of it. So you can see this textures which is coming out. You can see this this frilling which has been considered that okay, these are the defects of negatives, but which been embedded as a texture. Which also give you a kind of a sense of temporality into it, organic forms into it. So I use it intentionally, and then I enlarge it so that that amplifies the whole thing. And then I printed it on a gum bichromate print. But so the new space been printed like that way, been approached to that way. I used charcoal as a body of the paint. That is also intentional because that's the basic component of nature. So these are the underlying elements which are into it. Shantiniketan has a very specific idea about education, about living, about your life pattern, which is, I think, which has a very significant role to play on life of us who lives here. At certain point of time, the idea of Pan-Asian was more important than being an Indianness. So there was no idea of Indianness against the colonial power. There was an idea of Pan-Asian structures. So Tagore, the Tagore's family, the philosophers of his contemporaries, they were looking for a Pan-Asian structure rather than protesting against Western influences or a colonial structure. There was direct influences from Indonesian Java batik to Shantiniketan. The art forms directly, the craft form came directly. There were influences of Chinese artists, Japanese artists, in terms of architecture, in terms of carpentry, in terms of furniture designing. And the same thing is happening simultaneously in Bauhaus and here. So these were the phenomena which shaped the whole idea of it. And why I'm mentioning this Pan-Asian repeatedly, because that's the philosophy which talks about that you reject your immediate society and then you leave, you develop yourself, you self-realize yourself.